Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
So, apologies for the 8-minute delay. I was just trying to wipe all the sweat off my face and just got carried away. So, it's really hot in New York.
So hard.
Yeah. So, I'm via Dynasty. I am one half of La Maison de Rouge. This is our weekly Monday night Periscope live broadcast. And today we have the stunning Mistress Mari, who is a ProDomme and a BDSM coach and educator, as well as a fetish model. And they are based in Toronto, Canada. So, so we're gonna do a little interview and get to know Mistress Mari a little better. And I want all of you to be on your best behavior and try not to make any lewd comments because, you know, we know how it is when it comes to men and beautiful women. And also, we would really like it if you could hold your questions until the very end of the interview, and that way we can definitely get them answered. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for for joining us today. So we'll start with maybe where it all began. Mistress Mari, is there anything that you would like to share with us before we begin?
Oh, I'm just going to say hello. Also, am I the first person from Canada on the show?
Yes.
Woo! That's so exciting. I'm sorry, some Canada represent.
Congratulations.
This episode. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. We can start from the beginning.
Okay, so in the beginning, when did you have your first kinky experience, whether it was sexual or non-sexual?
Well, I would say it would probably have to be when I was in high school. I had sort of just been, I wasn't really a people person. I was good at school, but I was never, I spent a lot of time outside of school. And I remember that I had gotten in a fight. So I wasn't necessarily always on my best behavior. And it's gonna sound so funny, but I just I'm such a calm person, but something snapped. I ended up getting in this argument with someone, and I don't know, it just felt really good. Like I was on top of them, and I was like, "Oh, this is a little weird." I'm like having a really good time, and this was the first time I had fought anyone ever in my life. Like I am such a pacifist. I was really shy. I was like super nerdy, just like a bookworm, very type A. And yeah, I just ended up on top of this other girl, and I was like, wow, I feel weird. I feel super pumped and super excited. And I was like, I want to do that again. But then I was obviously realistically like, I can't fight people out of nowhere. That was sort of like where I was like, oh, I can be assertive about things. Like it just started to sort of occur to me that I could be really assertive in my life with people, not necessarily fighting them physically, but that I could have boundaries, because I feel like we teach a lot of young people, especially young women, that like they don't need to have boundaries with people, and that they could just kind of be open, and it's like, yeah, just say yes to everything, and like you don't have to have boundaries. Like that wasn't something that I really learned about, and that was a moment where I was like, I can have boundaries. So that was like kind of I guess a more non-sexual experience that I had had.
Yeah.
It led me to other places. I started exploring BDSM when I was about 18.
Okay.
I ended up sort of discovering that there were people that were into that, or like that, people were interested in being around dominant women. But it wasn't like, there wasn't that like spark of like, when you're like, when you do something, you're like, wow, I'm obsessed with doing this really very specific kink, and I'm losing my mind right now. That really happened when I ended up going to this photographer's house that was taking photos for me. I started doing modeling, and I started branching out. And someone had invited me to do a latex photo shoot, my first latex photo shoot ever. And I get there, and I go downstairs, and there's a giant back bed.
Oh, wow.
So I'm looking at this thing, this like plastic on the floor, and I'm like, did I go into a serial killer's house? Is it the end for me? Like, I really thought it was the end for me.
So you didn't know exactly what it was?
No, I had no idea. I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this, like, I still wasn't doing like kinky stuff at the time, but I was like sort of into that, okay, let's get like stylistically, I was like, okay, I'm wearing a lot of leather. And then I was like, okay, this person's gonna do a latex photo shoot. And of course, I always just been like, I love that idea of like the dom and the full cats. You know, I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I walked downstairs. So I hadn't been exposed to like anything, I would say, really outside of like any sort of verbal humiliation or anything. And then just going into this basement and seeing a giant plastic sheet.
So what did you do at that point? Like, were they expecting you to get inside of it? Like, was that why you were there?
Well, so there's the photo studio in the back, and then the back bed was there, and he had used it for a shoot the day before.
Oh, okay.
But I just stood there on the steps downstairs.
You're like, what is this murder contraption?
Yeah, I was like, I've made a mistake.
I'm going to work today and suffocate inside of this big trash bag.
And I was just like, what? So what? What is that? And then the photographer explained to me that he was a breath play fetishist.
Mm-hmm.
Asphyxiation play was his thing, and he was doing a series of photo shoots at the time.
Okay.
And he was like, well, you're not going to do that. You're just going to, stand and like model some latex. And I was like, but I can't. Like, I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
I was like, because I was like, how does this work? And he was showing me the photos, and everyone looked like, I just found the idea of being sort of closed in, like it just looked really aesthetically pleasing to me.
Right.
And I was in art school at the time, so I was like, hey, I'm going to go in this thing. I go in. I was like, no. I immediately was like,
yeah,
I don't know how I feel about this. Then I get out, and then he's like, well, do you want to, he's like, I can show you how this works. He's like, if you come back tomorrow, because I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this, but I find the visual appealing. Like, I don't want to be in there, but like, so he was like, well, if you want, you can come back tomorrow, and we can we'll just do a day. I'll show you how everything works. I'll teach you safety protocols, which was like, which I'm so grateful was like actually my first intro experience. It could have been serial killer, and it wasn't. So I was really excited. I was like, okay, cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I came the next day, and I put a grown man in a vac bed, and it was it just something clicked for me at that moment, and I was like, this is what I need to be doing for the rest of my life.
Wow,
that's what happened.
That's so amazing, because you were actually fully exposed to something that was like, it had a vocabulary, and it had there was somebody to guide you and to like show you and expose you to like, what it's for and all that stuff. And what's funny? I find that art school is totally a gateway. Like it's like the gateway drug.
100%. I was like, because every week it was like, do something, make something, and I would just want to do the weirdest things, and then sort of already kind of I was doing a lot of work around just like women, and I was just really interested in divine femininity, and mythology, and then
Okay.
just meeting this person who was really open to showing me these things
Yeah.
was really fantastic.
Yeah, it was like some divine, you know, like
Total,
again, gateway opening up and being like, here, this is the path to the rest of your life.
total divine intervention, and totally a kind of crazy experience. But I was so grateful that it was in. I think if it wasn't in such a safe space at that time, it would have been a totally different experience. And it sort of made me realize, because, sort of visiting clubs or places and realizing a lot of people were like, I'm into this, but I actually don't know what I'm doing. And then meeting this person who was quite older, had been doing BDSM for almost 30 years.
Wow.
To sort of be like, no, like there's actually protocols around this. There's ways of doing this.
Yeah, and he was a non-slimy photographer that didn't try to take advantage of you. And so another very, very fortunate.
It was a very cheers to that moment.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's really rare, and it's a really unfortunate thing that happens. I'm sure to pretty much everyone who's in our industry. But I was really fortunate, to sort of meet someone who was just open to show me. And I mean, I'm sure it helped that he had a dominant wife who was just like cheering me on in the background. She was like, "This is
okay, that makes sense."
I was like, "Oh, okay." You have supervision.
Exactly, you have somebody looking over you. So somebody said that there's some feedback with your mic. I don't know if that's something that is like space related or technology related or anything that you can fix. But thank you for letting us know, Celeste. So, if there's anything you can do about it, cool. If not, no big deal.
All right, let's see if we can maybe adjust the volume.
Controls of your microphone. Most people don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like laptop microphone, but if I put this a little bit lower, is this a little bit better?
Let's try it. Let's just move on and see how it works out.
See how it works. Yes.
Yeah. So from that point on, when you discovered, oh my God, this is what I need to be doing. What did you do?
Well, I went back to work the next day, went back to my my job, and I was like sitting there and I was like, okay, I don't think this is like, something just like totally came over me where I had to do something about this. And so I ended up sort of diving into videos. Reading about it was mostly what sort of happened. I was really interested in the history. And I came across Cleo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was really interested in her practice. So I ended up reaching out to her, and I ended up going to San Francisco, left my job.
Whoa.
Went to San Francisco and ended up doing the Dominatrix training program with her, which was the best experience, one of the best experiences of my life. And so meeting a really awesome, I really wanted to look for a practitioner that I felt aligned with me spiritually. And that was someone that I really just connected to.
Yeah. I've heard really amazing things about her. Never met her, but I would love to meet her, or at least, get to virtually connect with her in some way. So what were some things that you learned about this craft that were like surprising to you?
I think learning a lot of nonverbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that took time.
Yeah.
And I'm still sort of working on that.
So being like very conscious of the way that you move and the way that you like kind of hold your face like gesturally or whatever, stuff like that, or even beyond that?
I would say that as well, but just learning about my dominant self, and realizing that actually takes time. Realizing that that's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
So it's because you want to go straight to the and I was very interested in highly technical play and highly sadistic play, but realizing that is super complex and involves a lot of things. And being able to pace myself would be the best thing that I could really do for myself.
Yeah.
And finding that out was once you realize, I like to put people in body bags. You start wanting to pull them upside down and do this and bury them in the forest, and then you're like, whoa, I gotta, pace myself.
Right.
In those kinds of situations. So just learning about that nonverbal communication with that person, because I had the technical ability, but just learning to be able to read that other person and develop an intimate relationship with that person became something that was central to my practice.
Totally. I definitely relate to that as well. Like I think in the beginning, a lot of myself included, but a lot of people tend to overcompensate with like dominance and toys and tools, and kind of have that be like your thing that you're using to wield over the person. But like the more nuanced interactions and the words that you use and the words that you don't use and the way that you use them, and like not just verbal but also nonverbal, like you were saying, that's how you gain trust. You can't just be like, oh, you can trust me, like that's not going to work. So I totally agree with you that is a kind of a lifelong skill of learning. And as you grow as a woman and as a person, these more stuff surfaces and you're like, oh, I can keep getting better at this. It's like it never ends.
It's kind of like a muscle in a way. That's sort of how I really see it, is like, or like when you're doing yoga or working out, you have to make a conscious effort to bring all of yourself and bring intention to that space, and being able to channel intention, that that's something that can only develop over time.
Yeah, that's really awesome and insightful to be able to talk about. Have you has your like sexuality evolved in any way from this craft as well?
Oh, in so many ways. I think that a lot of the times I had a tendency to use a lot of brute force, or try to fit into a stereotype of what I thought was, a FemDom.
Like the mean, clad bitch, yeah.
And still loving those parts, but something that I carried through me with me that Madame Cleo taught me, and I think it's important when you see that history. I'm learning about those archetypes. So being able to be introduced to archetypes was a huge game changer for me. And being like, I don't have to play this one stereotypical sort of cartoon character, or what I would say is a man's projection of what they want you to be. Because working in the ProDomme sphere, you'll get a lot, especially when you start, you get a lot of that, of people who actually this is the projection of their fantasy onto you, and being able to take that control back, being really grounded, and being like, no, I'm going to present these different archetypes based on how we interact as people, instead of this projection of what you want me to be. It was a huge game changer for my sexuality, allowed me to be much more open with myself and with other people.
Right.
And be open also to, this sounds funny, but being open and being very comfortable with rejection.
Yeah. Because
learning that not everyone is for you, and you're not everyone's cup of tea.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's extremely important in owning your power too, is like being like embracing who you are on all levels, and really, like owning your uniqueness, and knowing that like there will be people that align with you, and then there will be people that don't, and that's okay, because the people that don't, they'll find somebody else, and they probably wouldn't have been that fun to play with anyway.
Totally.
That's awesome. That took me a really long time to learn, because I was groomed in a house, and they wanted all of us, it was an Asian house, like all Asians, so they wanted us to be all like interchangeable. Which is like, oh, okay, it's like so icky to like, just feel like you're just this shell, that everybody else gets to project their fantasies on. So that's a lot of unlearning that I've been doing too. So how long have you been professionally domming?
Well, the minute I got back from San Francisco, I just like went right into it, which was, it was an interesting decision to make, but I felt like it was the right one, because I took about like 3 or 4 months off. I spent a lot of time individually with people that I really connected with personally. That, when I came back, it was a really profound experience for my personhood. So coming back and being like, I want to connect with this person on this level, or I want to work, and then working with those people, and then coming and be like, I think I'm, I had to think to myself, like, am I gonna go back to my day job and go back to, I was in school at the time for art. It didn't click in that way, and I felt like it was really important for me to follow my heart. So I just followed my heart, and I also believe that, I value the work that I put into this.
Yes.
And I value my time. Like, it taught me about the value of time.
Yeah.
Time period. Like, not just my time, but spending time with other people, cultivating time. It's awesome to be able to stretch and manipulate time when you're with someone.
Totally.
Because that's when you're really fully engaged. Again, that intention. And so being able to do that, and then realizing, okay, like, yes, I want to do this professionally and charge for my time, because I value this interaction that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it's something that it's not for everyone, but it's a really unique access point, to be able to have people open themselves to certain experiences.
Yeah.
And I also like to work with people who maybe this isn't their sort of everyday lifestyle. It's something that they kind of have to lean into for various reasons. They're not able to be open with themselves. So being able to work with people and be able to hold space for them in that way is totally amazing. So that's It's about like I'm 22 now, so yeah, almost like I would say my first year was kind of a doozy. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And like that was
learning to walk all over again.
Yeah, it's like learning to walk. And I'm fortunate to have really amazing. I was like very fortunate to have really good mentors to Then afterwards, spending a couple weeks and then consistently traveling to the Bay Area just to sort of get back in that space, to sort of bring together everything that I learned. So I would say the first year was maybe a learning experience. I'm going to say 3, not 4,
Okay.
but for me personally, but yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing it for around between 3 and 4 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because it sounds like you've really been able to be present and absorb like the wisdom that your mentor was able to, teach you or show you, which seems like pretty directed, like it was focused on you specifically, and not just like going to school and having to kind of like sort out what works for you and what learning style doesn't work for you. And that's really fortunate that you were able to also take off time to get to do that, to learn from Cleo, as well as come out of that learning space and kind of create that space for yourself where you are. That's a pretty unique journey.
Yeah, it was kind of, it was honestly, I went there with $500 in my pocket, which is not recommended. San Francisco is really expensive.
So expensive. Yeah. Wow.
And I was like, I was there and I was like, oh, like I totally miscalculated this whole situation. So I started picking up, work here and there. And I did, I would say I began my journey sort of doing like phone lines, or, I was like, okay, I gotta like make, I gotta make money, but I can't exactly just waltz around here and like be like, someone give me a job. I just started taking calls. And kind of funny.
So you're talking about like doing like phone, like night flirt, or like phone?
Totally.
Okay.
Which is like, it was definitely a funny experience, because again, totally different from that in-person doming, but I was doing it while I was going to work with Cleo.
Yeah.
And also Eve Minax was also
Okay.
teaching there at the time. But sort of coming back here, it did, I did work in other people's dungeons. So actually getting to learn from those people.
Yeah.
And getting to, ask them about their practice or what helps them, or, just sort of being open and being like, I'm really having trouble with this thing. How does that work for you? So just kind of being able to open myself up to that experience. I think I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't completely be vulnerable to that experience.
Yeah, and that even goes against sometimes like the whole archetype of what a dominatrix, is supposed to be like, where you're not, you're like somehow supposed to be born fully formed with like a whip in your hand and thigh-high leather boots and know everything about everything and be able to read everybody's mind, which is not, definitely not.
Totally.
It's so great to kind of like approach FemDom with a beginner's mind, because there are so many different types of FemDoms too. And being in San Francisco, I mean, it's like New York in a lot of ways. There's just like so many different types of doms and so many people that you can learn from. So that's also a really fortunate and unique, and as Mistress Red says, brave and adventurous.
It was I had to build courage. I had to find courage in the 6 hours that so I'm originally from Montreal. So I took the plane. It was about 4.5. It was 6 hours door to door.
Wow.
So in the 6 hours, I was like, okay. I was on that plane. I was like, in 6 hours, I'm going to have to do this. I've made this decision. Yeah. And it was over the winter. It was over a winter break for school. Oh. So when I came back, I was like right back in school, and I was just sort of sitting there with this secret. I thought I had this secret.
Big juicy secret. I love those.
So was funny, but I wanted to touch on what you were saying because I think it's really interesting that that idea of like, yeah, coming out with the whip and you're just like, it is who I think for, I would say most people who lean into their dominant side, like it is who you are. But that does take a certain amount of courage but also like being able to want to do that self-discovery and make that jump. I think again for like women or queer folks or anyone who's marginalized, we're not like told to harness that. We're not. It's often really discouraged. And when I think about how, you know, for instance, men, particularly cis men, get to spend their whole life being totally encouraged and pumped up to like take every opportunity, take no shit, tell people how you feel, and other people don't get to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it totally makes sense. Oh no, am I getting cut off?
No, I mean you're still with me.
Oh, there was a little loop. It was like loading, but I'm glad I'm still here. But yeah, so just being able to, I think acknowledge that is really important.
Totally. There's definitely like a interesting kind of like gender role switch up with this craft, and for a lot of women who are naturally dominant, you know, I definitely think that this is an amazing career if you're willing to put up with all the other shit. But for women who are not, who are naturally dominant and maybe not kinky or not into this providing this kind of service, like it has to be so challenging to just be yourself, you know, in society, because we're taught to, like, women are taught to be demure and modest and quiet and just take what they're given, not ask for more, and all this stuff. And of course men are kind of the opposite in their conditioning. And so yeah, it definitely takes it takes courage to just kind of like be yourself, but it even takes more courage to put your own personality into this like service, basically. And again, brave and adventurous.
That's what I expect to be.
I think such a wonderful set of adjectives.
I appreciate that. Just read.
So, I feel like we've covered like a lot of these questions kind of already, you know, like, because you've been so open about sharing your experiences and your insights. Let's like pan out a little bit, and I want to know your thoughts about the future of kink and BDSM in like popular culture.
That's interesting. I think there's some good things. I'm going to focus on the good things, but I do think that a lot more people are getting in touch with themselves and learning to be intentional. Like I said, with their sexuality. I think also that there seems to be sort of a more mainstream acceptance. We're going to put that in big quotations. of sort of, I'm not going to say it's an acceptance. I think that sex workers across the board are, we are like really starting to have a strong formation as a group of people. Not that we didn't before, but just with the visibility of new media and new ways of doing things, we are able to stand our ground in that way. And, you know, while things are becoming accepted, of course, there's going to be more stereotyping or sort of more silencing happening, just because we are. And I think that goes to show in a weird way that we do have a presence, and that people are starting to be like, oh, these people exist. And for some people, there's that fear. I feel like there's a lot of fear. And I feel like, especially, I would say for a lot of younger people, there's a lot of interest. So the good and the bad, censorship, bad, making our jobs illegal, very bad.
Yeah.
And it's happening here in Canada too, in a lot of ways we experience. And I feel like it's important to talk about that a little bit too, because, obviously we're different from the US in a lot of ways. But our work isn't fully legal. We operate on a sort of like quasi-Nordic model situation. So, our clients are criminalized. And by proxy, we become criminalized because, they want to stop us from doing our work. So we have similar issues with payment processors and that sort of thing. And then also people in legislation and politics wanting to stop us from being able to be visible on the internet.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a big, in terms of the future, I think it's going to be a lot difficult for sex workers or people who are erotic laborers to be, or even people who just are around kink and BDSM to be able, which is lumped in that, but anyone who's doing any professional work, to be able to be open about themselves, which I think is a real shame. And but in terms of, I would say, younger folks, I think younger folks are kind of excited about being able to be open or find alternative modes of expressing themselves, especially, I would say, in the queer community. We see a lot of people engaging with that more directly. And yeah, so that's exciting to me, and I think the technology part also is something I'm really interested in. I do work with a lot of new media, so the idea of doing some digital interfacing with my work is kind of cool. So I like that part. I don't know, for COVID, that is also a whole other thing too. I feel like COVID kind of took us by surprise.
I mean, it's COVID is kind of forcing us to be more digital and virtual, and so being able to still do our work, I think, is really important, because I find this work to be critical for a lot of people that don't have this kind of outlet where they are, and it's it's a like sexuality, including kink. Kink is definitely a sexuality, is so important, like, to the human existence. It's a part of us. It's not something we need to keep in the dark. It's not something that necessarily needs to be like, only done and not talked about, right? And so I think a lot of what you're talking about in terms of showing up in media, and kink and BDSM becoming more kind of like visible, I think that's going to be really important, because then it shows other people who may not be, who may just be burgeoning in their sexuality, like other formats, like outside of the vanilla missionary stuff, or the mainstream kink stuff, I mean, mainstream porn stuff. So I think that, that's going to be, and there's a lot of pushback too, which is interesting. Like, sex workers are out there being portrayed in very kind of like disparaging ways, and we are pushing back and being like, no, we're not like this. We're not all victims. We're not all like vectors of disease. We're not all this and that. And so the spectrum of sex workers is broadening in media as well, and the representation is becoming a lot more realistic. But there's even more, like, I guess, like, people that are just not okay with that. The more we push back, the more they push back. So it's an interesting dynamic what's going on right now. It's like a lot of like opposing forces going on.
I think there's so much fear and shame.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny to say, but it's like the shame of the fear. It's like, I'm so ashamed that I feel scared about this, or I feel angry about this, or that I don't like this. And
or that it turns you on, you know?
yeah.
I'm ashamed that this turned me on. I don't understand. Yeah.
It's like, it's really, no, I think that you're totally right on the mark when you say that about being able to have ownership over the narrative that we have, and also to be able to integrate sexuality into different modalities. It's why I also say that I work as a life coach and as a consultant. It's really important to me that even if someone isn't sure that they want to, go right into a session, or that's not, to be able to understand how getting in touch with their sexuality or their desires, or even just kink, can help them in different parts of their life. There's sometimes with some clients where, I just do a workout in the morning, and like they find it funny, or like, it's funny to some people, but it's like that motivation that they need, or like being able to work through these emotional things, like really helps them in their day. So I think it's important that we sort of, like I think as sex workers, we're allowed to sort of show people that there's so much more.
Yeah. And it, like everything is tied and connected within us. So to separate, this aspect of our lives, of our humanity out, such as sex, is to cut off a part of, it's like cutting off a limb. And when you incorporate and integrate sexuality into your life, it doesn't mean that everything that you do is sexual. It just means that you are being more complete.
Yes.
And honoring all parts of you.
I really love how you put that. That's, it's totally what it is. Yeah.
It is. So I kind of like get the sense that you are like, are you spiritual? Do you have kind of like a spiritual take on some of your practices? Your BDSM?
I think I tend to be a very spiritual person in terms of where I come from, and my ancestral lineage and things like that are very important to me. So spending a lot of time around ritual is huge for me. In a sort of professional setting, it depends on who I'm working with. But a lot of times I see spirituality as like a sort of self-insight. And actually, my friend had put it really well the other day. It's like you feel like you're sort of following this kind of almost like rabbit hole. And it's going to bring you to some really wonderful realizations. It might bring you to some really intense ones, or things that are, it's a guided in sort of intention. So you might find things that you don't like about yourself, or that you want to change, or want to make a change. So yeah, I think that a lot of my work with people, even if they don't necessarily see it, a lot of the times I'll get people and they're like, I don't know anything about this. This does not interest me. End up having profound realizations about themselves. I would say, if there's one thing in my work that's really important, is working with people who want to experience the joy of change.
Yes.
Positive and negative.
Yeah, that's so important, because I think that that's, that might not be what they're coming for. But when they are open and they allow themselves to experience, whatever they're experiencing, and feel it fully without expectation, or without like trying to rationalize it or intellectualize it, it can be very much a spiritual experience, as well as a sexual experience, as well as so many other things. And again, like in my opinion, spirituality is another integrated aspect of life, just like sexuality. And so when you cut out you know, when you like compartmentalize everything in a way where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do sex now. You know, it's like you're missing so much more, you know, like
Totally,
yeah.
100%, or even just like sort of, I wouldn't even say like rationalizing, but I enjoy working with a lot of sort of psychological methodologies, or doing like very again, I'm really into very complex scenes. I get called a lot to do a lot of kidnappings, or that's like my main thing.
That's
And
fun.
people are like, well, that's not really spiritual. It seems like more of this psychological thing, or like a brutal thing. But I feel like it is such a journey for that person, in being able to experience another person's self, another person's spiritual space,
Yeah,
and intention, and then inhibiting that space, and also giving that feedback, like an interplay of that. So it doesn't become like a sort of like, I'm going to do this like textbook sort of thing. Which is why when I left my classical sort of training, like I took so much time to really try to discover what it is that I needed in a personal and a professional setting
yeah,
as well. Like learning that, okay, there's this side that I want to work with people, and then maybe this side that's just actually for me,
yeah,
that I don't want to share with people. And I encourage, the clients that I see as well to engage with that as well.
totally. Yeah, it's so important because it's like, you know, to use an analogy in what you're talking about, it's like having sex with other people is great, but having sex with yourself is where you really discover yourself.
Totally.
And that's, you know, some people call that masturbation.
Yeah.
um,
We highly encourage.
yes, yes. Okay, so let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. Um, so do you have, okay, two questions. What is your most ideal type of, or like, you know, session experience? And then what are some pet peeves?
I'm excited for this question. Ideal sessions, as in what I like, the activities I like to do, or like the people.
Yeah, your absolute favorite things. Like for me, I like medical play. I like to, you know, draw blood and do needles and whatever. But yeah, like
That sort of stuff. Gotcha. So for me, my my top all time, my top 10 is going to take me like 6 hours. My top all time is what I meant to say. Like favorite thing to do is working with kidnappings. Um, or kidnappings, but we can go more broadly and just doing these sort of multi-houred, like layered sort of sequences. But the kidnappings for me, it just like something does it for me. It's super fun. And I don't know, there's nothing like throwing a man in the back of your car
oh my god,
and driving off into the sunset.
like, where do I get a car for this?
And we're really fortunate to have like beautiful forests out just outside the city, so not too much of a stretch. Yeah,
God, I love that.
it's super fun, and I love being able to bring people to seclusion. I feel like in the city, especially in Toronto, in Toronto, we like everybody's so busy in their head, and then I've had people tell me after, like, I had no idea where you brought me. Sometimes we'll go all the way back and we'll have like a drop off point, and so they'll sit there and be like, I literally had no idea where it was for 4 hours. So it's really fun to have that element of surprise. I love the element of surprise in fear play. Breath play is a huge one for me because it's like feels like an old faithful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And also one that I like to work with a lot is I like to call it, it's sort of my own thing, but I've called it like my reverse age play.
You're what?
It's like almost like a reverse age play. Like it's fascinating to me to work with folks who are older and have a lot of assumptions about sort of how I want to do my play, and then sort of playing around with that and toying with that is really fun for me as well. Just because I feel like people have a certain expectation, and then I kind of like to like twist that on their head and make them interrogate that desire for youthfulness more broadly in a way, because I think it's important to be critical about that, actually, and looking at that is really fun to do that as well. So that's for me really what I like to sort of situate myself in.
I love that. I love it so much. Gosh. It's like, it's not the easiest thing to do that here in a very, very populated, you know, city where people are always watching, and like if I just threw some man in the back of a car, I'm sure everybody would have their like video phone out, like taping me and being like, look what she did, you know, and put it on the internet. I don't want that. But the idea of kidnapping and abduction sounds like so much fun, and I cannot wait to actually get, you know, the chance to do that.
It was kind of crazy because it was one of my first it was one of the first requests I ever took on as a ProDomme.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
And I myself was like, okay, you know, and I you know, I really spent a good month and a half like planning this whole thing out. And then just realizing that's what I like to do, just ended up really working for me. And in Toronto is a huge city as well. I love that element of sort of fear. Most of my clients are carrying a ton of waivers in their pockets and all. Like we've got there's a whole setup for it. But I love that sort of element of people kind of being like, what is going on here? And then sort of, being able to just have fun with that dynamic is really great.
That's so awesome.
And you don't have to leave the city to do a kidnapping too. I will say that.
You don't.
No, you don't always have to. I like leaving the city because I like being in nature, but you know, so
driving and they're just kind of like, oh, you know, like the longer the drive is, the more they're just kind of like fearful,
disoriented. Yeah.
Okay, so gosh, I'm gonna be thinking about that like a lot. What about some pet peeves?
Oh yes, pet peeves. I have so many.
Okay.
No, well, I dislike folks who are not precise with, or who try to like top from the bottom. Mm-hmm. That's a huge pet peeve for me. I really enjoy playing with genuine sadists and genuine, submissives, and some people are just fetishists, and that's okay. I have an option that says like, are you a fetishist? Or to describe that experience, and I feel like some people want to take it 100. They want to go from like 0 to 100 real quick, and they want to, they're like, I'm okay with anything. I don't like, you could tell that, and again, that nonverbal body language becomes so important. You could tell when someone is not ready to approach that space, and when they keep trying to push that in a session, they're like, I know you can do it. And I'm like, I know I have that skill, but that's not something I want to do, or that's not something I feel like you've earned at all.
Yeah. But they're still trying to challenge or something.
Totally. Yeah. It's like a weird sort of, I don't mind a confrontational kind of bent, but I don't like when that confrontation becomes pushing of people's boundaries or becomes disrespectful. Yeah. So that sort of bothers me. And another thing that is, I would say, like, that's my main pet peeves. I also dislike when folks tend to sort of rush, like, are not open or honest when it's like giving the time to talk. And someone's like, I'm going to maximize this time with you, or sort of like they want to control the flow.
Right.
And the thing about like a flow of a time is like, you know, we've set everything up, we have things in a certain way, and of course things will change, but I think it's important when people like need to let themselves go.
Yeah.
Someone who spends the entire time not willing to step off, it can get really draining.
Yeah, and from, you know, personally, when somebody, like, I can feel like they're trying to control the flow, it makes me want to just like sit there and talk to them even more.
I know, I'm not going to let you get up off your knees if you keep trying to, you know, if we keep doing this little dance.
Yeah, like, do you just want to go ahead and just tell me what to do, when to do it, and we can, you know, like, we can just, I can just be your fetish robot, you know? Is that what you're here for?
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun when people do that.
Totally not fun.
And just disrespectful of our knowledge.
Yeah, and if there's no trust, you know, there's just like, oh, well, like I'm they're still in kind of like that controller mode where they haven't come out from the space of their everyday into this alternate space that we inhabit and collaborate on. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, anyway, I won't go into that too much. All right, so two last fun little questions. What are your vices and your virtues?
My vice has to be sweets.
Yes.
I really love, but like really specific sweets. Like I have like a sweet tooth for lemon desserts. I grew up with lemon desserts, so I'm obsessed with eating lemon desserts, and everybody knows like my space is stocked with little lemon candies.
Aw.
I just love lemon sweets.
Yeah. I mean, lemonade, you know, like even just like sweet, tart, citrus. It's just so good. Unbeatable.
Ever. And my vice. Oh, is that a vice? Or is that my virtue?
That was a vice, and then your virtue.
Well, I like to do a lot of yoga. So I would say that's my virtue. I feel like it's made me become much more of a centered human being in my life.
Yeah.
And allowed me to sort of connect fully with another person.
Yeah.
And I feel like I owe it to myself to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome. I love it when people have their own practices to kind of like maintain their own peace. You know, those are, because it's different for everybody, and yoga is awesome. Like, it's meditative. It's good for your body. It's good for your mind. It's good for your breath. So awesome. All right, so I think okay. I think there are quite a few questions here. And let's go ahead and start with some of the ones that have already been asked. So Mistress Red would like to know if you do sessions in French.
I do. I speak French. Where I grew up, we speak English and French. I only started doing them this year, pre-COVID, obviously, because the terminology and the dynamic is super different.
Oh, okay.
Once you enter another language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've just sort of realized that, yeah, like certain things I would say are, you know, maybe there's like, oh, a specific sort of kink terminology in French as well. So it took time to learn that. I was using sort of common language, and like a lot of the subs I was seeing were very confused.
Oh, yeah.
I just got really confused. So
that's fascinating that there's a whole specific lexicon of kink vocabulary in French.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of that, like, just the nuance of saying one word versus another and the impact that it has on that person.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so let's see. Next question. Where is Okay, you kind of answered this one already. The kink fetish you love to hear sub request, which is kidnapping. We have this one question here. How do I know my FemDom will keep our experiences and session history completely confidential?
In the forms. Also, just I think it's important to find someone you trust. If you feel like you don't trust that person, it'll probably be very difficult to feel like that person is keeping your space sort of private, or your experience private. But I have a handy little section in the form that I ask if it's okay to talk about this or post pictures, and then just reiterating that in session. So I think if you are someone who's very concerned about privacy, just be sure to reiterate that with
and I'm just gonna kind of piggyback off of that. I'm Timbus. That you just you do have to trust. You have to find somebody that you trust. I totally agree with Mistress Mari about that. And usually for us, as professionals, people who charge money for our services versus people who don't charge money for their services, we are extremely serious about consent. So if you have not consented to having your experiences and your session history shared with the world or on the internet or in a blog, whatever, it will not be shared. There are definitely people out there who don't practice consent. They don't practice like safe, sane, consensual, or risk-aware consensual kink, and that's very unfortunate. And I know that people have had their trust broken for that. So, in my opinion, you want to find somebody who is a professional, and you want to make it very, very clear to them that you would or you would not like to have your experiences shared. And that, that is something that you have to come to them and say, and that way all your bases are covered. And that's all you can do. Like, does anybody ever know anything?
Also, there's such a cute cat in the background. Oh, yeah. Is that your feline friend?
Yeah, she's my familiar, sitting at the window there. Okay, and then Robert would like to know, what are your aspirations for your own future as a dom? Own a dungeon, travel, learning new kinks?
Well, COVID kind of put me in introspection mode. I haven't really been super active, but it was great. It allowed me to really think about what I want to do as a dom. For me, I'm really excited to sort of blend my knowledge as a femdom with sort of exterior projects, especially around food, wine, that sort of thing. I'm a huge fan of wine, and I just got my sommelier certification.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, just kind of working on that project. I love blending food and BDSM, those sort of like femdom dinners.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah, which was cool. It was a project in mind, but then sort of COVID, but just learning to sort of bring that into virtual space, I would say is what I'm looking forward to right now. And yeah, just in the long term, I think this is something that is going to continue to be really important in my life. So I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. But just continuing to expand my experience and work with really awesome people.
Awesome. Do you have your own space, or is that something that you care about?
I had my own space, but I had to close it. It was going to open, and I had started to have session, but with COVID, it just ended up not being financially feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was using other close, like sort of friends and colleagues of mine spaces, which is great. So eventually, I would like to open my own space again. But for now, it's COVID time.
Yeah, COVID time.
That's what I just started calling it. It's like COVID times.
And it's hard to predict, you know, like when this is going to end and if anything in the future is going to be financially viable, because it'll be hard. It might be hard to sustain all that with, you know, the after effects of COVID. Okay, so next question. Celeste Taylor would like to know, please tell us more how to execute abduction / kidnapping in a populated area. And of course, you know, like if you don't want to give away all your secrets, please don't. You know,
well, I like to share. I will. I have many secrets. I'm a woman of many secrets, but waivers are really fun. I talked about this on Twitter. Actually, someone was like, there was like a whole thread about that the other day, which you can check out. And just going into obviously more detail. But yeah, lots of waivers, forms, and in terms of a populated area, it's finding a less populated area, right? So there are places in a city where there's going to be less traffic. So being mindful of that, and discussing, if you can, with the people beforehand, what's going on. I have told many a parking attendant in my time, this is what's going on. Here's like sort of explaining it to them, and they were a little bit like, this is weird. And I'm like, well, are you gonna help me or not? So like just like sort of figuring out what areas, if that's obviously feels safe to do so. Of course. And another thing I don't know tips, but just the timing. Obviously, in the middle of rush hour, it's probably not the best idea to put a man in your trunk, like in the smack in the middle of downtown. So yeah, just sort of thinking about that. The logistics really depend on the scene and like the person's preferences.
Right. And that you've spent up to a month and a half planning a kidnapping scene?
Totally. These are incredibly involved scenes. I've gotten a little bit, like now that I have a sort of routine and space together, like I know how long can be, but oftentimes, you know, these will be multi-hour sessions. So there is a certain level of preparation involved, and just sort of also negotiation being really important. And I also I'll have someone drive for me. So it helps a lot to basically have someone else drive for you.
Yeah, because then you could focus on kind of like your victim or your captive.
Yes.
Okay, so let's have a couple more questions. Oh, SX Noir says, I volunteer. So Timbus says, would like to ask, do you think it will ever end? And do you take certain precautions for Corona?
Yes. I mean, I hope it will end. I am unfortunately not able to predict the future. But if we all wear masks and we social distance, probably faster.
Everybody has to do their part. And that if every single person did their part, then yes, it will probably end.
Yes, good, exactly. Great answer. And precautions, all the dungeon spaces I work at are taking precautions, and I myself will be posting my precautions when I'm taking in-person sessions again soon. So all of that will be up on the website.
Yes. So Tim,
you
can go to Mistress Mari's website, which I have scrolling on the bottom here, www.mistressmari.com, as well as their AVN Stars, Instagram, and Twitter handles. So if you guys want to connect with Mistress Mari, these are the ways. Preferably the ones behind paywalls are the best. Okay, Robert has another question, and this will be our last question. What are any rituals? Wait, there we go. What are any rituals you have to get ready for a session, and any you like to do to cool down afterward?
I love to do, and I had mentioned it before, but I love to do yoga, if possible, or workout, just anything to kind of get the blood pumping, just so I can feel ready. I also like to I'm really methodical. I like to plan everything out,
Yeah.
and sort of put my things where I want them to be. And then afterwards, in terms of a cool down, I love to have a glass of wine, or just unwind with food. I'm a big believer in going to eat after session. It's like the first thing I do. The minute I get out of there, I'm like, food.
Yeah, I mean, sessions take a lot of energy. Even if you're not physically like laboring to death, it takes a lot of mental and even emotional energy, and so you can really work up an appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful ritual. Okay, so let's see. We have no more questions, and do you? I have a question actually. Well, actually, I have two, and these are kind of like closing questions. First of all, how has the Black Lives Matter movement and uprising affected you, whether personally or professionally or anything? Because I think that that's important to mention, and we should not ignore that. So, how has that affected you?
For me, it affected me a lot, I would say personally. And, so I'm half Dominican, so I'm half Black. And so for me, as a biracial person, it was very important for me to spend time with my community. So I spent a lot of time with my people, and holding space for folks who were affected by this. I think it's also brought a greater awareness to my work, but also I've seen in the broader sphere of BSM of people thinking about, and I'll talk about more of the work here, but thinking critically about how they're engaging with certain practices, and thinking critically about the narratives of BDSM, how that can be comfortable or uncomfortable for certain people,
Yeah.
and reinforce certain dynamics, and learning to just engage critically with that work. So I think it's really awesome that people are understanding that politics will touch on everything in our lives. Like you said, everything is connected. So people being to actually, given the chance to investigate their sexuality a bit more and what that means, and also having people understand how important it is to support Black sex workers, particularly Black trans women and darker skinned Black women. For me, I benefit from a lot of colorism in the industry as a biracial woman. I do identify as Black, of course, but I do understand my experience is very different from other people. And so, I think it was really important for me during this time to sort of uplift folks around me, who maybe don't have that same level of privilege that I do in my work. And I think it's really important. And this is sort of me almost really, I would say, really speaking to other Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as like especially light-skinned people or mixed race people, that it's really important for us to stand and support, with Black folks and darker skinned people, because colorism in this industry is a huge problem, and it really hurts people. It's not a fun experience to have, and it's honestly, I feel like it's it's a very disrespectful thing to do to people who have really wonderful skills and things to share, and shouldn't, have to experience that. So yeah, that's really what it's been for me, is just kind of investigating that in my practice and holding space.
That's really awesome, because I know that there's definitely like people who are biracial and lighter skinned, who, I don't know, it's the idea of colorism, I think, isn't really like a lot of people, a lot of white people or non-black people don't really they don't really acknowledge, like, they're like, either you're black or you're not black. And it's like, yeah, actually, like, maybe you aren't conscious of this, but light-skinned people who are black or biracial are actually like get so much more pass, and people who are dark-skinned don't. And it's like, to me, it's just like, it's kind of astounding that people make that differentiation, that there's like a better kind of black person than I don't know. And it's so awesome that you make that distinction, and that you're able to like uplift everybody that you care about in your community.
Totally. I love how you put that, because it's like, if we can acknowledge that anti-blackness is a global concept, then we can acknowledge that colorism is a global concept that affects people across all races. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think being able to be in community with people I care about is just huge for me. And there's so many Black women in this industry who I consider really dear friends to me, but more than friends, are just incredible people who deserve to be supported.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think makes sex workers just like so much more ready for kind of like the next step of whatever the world is gonna be, the new world or whatever, because we already put up with so much shit, we already know what it's like to be the bottom of the barrel. So, and I'm not speaking in a way where like I'm not constantly stigmatized in ways that other sex workers are, but I consider myself a sex worker, so it's important for me to also uplift my community too. So I'm feeling on that.
Yeah.
And then my last question, and this will be the last question of all. Are there any projects or promotional things or new ideas that you're working on that you'd like to share with us that we could plug?
Yes. So I have, like I said, I'm working towards building a sort of wine and food practice centered around DOMs. So I'm really excited about that. I will be having a Patreon launch for that, hopefully when it's ready. I do share updates also on my AVN stores for like people who are I love my super fans, my superstar fans. And in terms of my other projects that I'm doing, hopefully if all goes well and it's safe to travel, I will be in the Czech Republic in September at the OWK. So I'll be sessioning at the OWK, which I'm super excited about.
For those of you that don't know what OWK is, it means Otherworld Kingdom, and it is a FemDom kingdom. If you can imagine
it's a FemDom castle, I'm super excited about. So that's going to be a really fun time for filming. So that's what I've sort of got in the works.
Awesome. So definitely share your Patreon with us when it launches. And speaking of Patreon, I'm just going to scroll our little Patreon here for the last few minutes. And since we have basically covered all the questions, there's a few more rolling in, but you know what? Tim Bus, you can join Mistress Mari's Avian Stars and ask that question through there. and she will give you her undivided attention.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to be on the show, and I love the show. I tune in all the time. So
thank you so much.
Super excited to be on, and thank you everyone for your super lovely questions.
Yes, thank you all for being very polite and asking really
nice
thoughtful questions.
Yes.
You guys are what make the show, every time. Just awesome questions. And Mistress Mari, you are such a lovely human. Thank you so much for your energy and your kindness and your sincerity and all the work that you do in the community as well. So I'm going to end this broadcast, and I want you guys to know that we will, of course, be back next week with more guests. And Mistress Mari, you can totally stay on, and we can say goodbye to each other privately.
Awesome.
All right. So everybody have a great week, and stay safe and kinky. All right. Bye.